Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Next up is British Infantry Tank Mark III Valentine. This is a 148 scale kit produced by Bandai. This was originally issued in 1975 and is kit number 8364. So the other name for this was Tank Infantry Valentine Mark 1 through 11. The name Valentine, there's several different stories as to where the name Valentine came from. One is that it was presented to the War Office on Valentine's Day in either 1940 or 1938. Another story says that John Carden, who designed the predecessors to the Valentine and a number of other tanks, pretty involved in tank design and production, that his middle name is Valentine, so this was named after that. Another story is that it's an acronym for Vickers Armstrong Limited, Ellswick and Newcastle upon Tyne. So this tank was designed and built in England by Vickers. And final version of the story is that it's just an in-house code name that Vickers was using for it and in its development process. So take your choice, which one of those you like, and that's the story. So it started out as a private design proposed by Vickers. They had developed the A9 and the A10 cruisers and the A11 infantry, and they wanted to kind of get something that was in the weight class of a cruiser tank, but had a little heavier armor of an infantry tank. And so they came up with this. So the weight they were able to get in that range. They had to sacrifice the armor a bit, so it was lighter than the Matilda at only 60 millimeters. And the way that they got away with it was by making a very small, tight, compact tank. So it's a very small, cramped tank. It's only has a 2-man turret in its initial form. It had a 2-pounder gun. It had a coaxial Besa machine gun, and it also, because of its compactness, had a very low silhouette, which made it advantageous for hold-down situations, particularly in the desert. The War Office wanted a 3-man turret, but with the war looming in 1939, they approved the design in April and ultimately placed the order for production in July of 39 for deliveries in May of 1940. There was no pilot model. There was no A model or an A code assigned to it either. They just went straight to production on it. The first trial models were done or were completed and trialed in May of 1940, and that's right around the time of Dunkirk, Operation Dynamo. And so they just kind of froze it and said, that's it, we need tanks, and let's make as many of these as we possibly can. Even though it wasn't quite a perfect tank, it was good enough. So it ended up filling a lot of the tank roles in the various different Royal Tank regiments, because they had no tanks. So they just cranked these suckers out fast. So it ended up serving as a cruiser tank, as an infantry tank, filling a lot of roles until other productions could catch up and replace it. So by September of 1940, 109 of these had been built. They ended up being sent to North Africa by about June of 1941. Had their first action in December of 41 with the 8th Royal Tank Regiment in Operation Crusader. The problems with the tank that they were experiencing there was the 2-pounder gun, which was also a problem with other British armor, was not capable of firing a high explosive round. So it was strictly an anti-armor gun, so that limited its effectiveness. It was, because of the small turret and the small ring, it would be difficult for them to fit a 6-pounder, and there really weren't a lot of 6-pounder guns available quite yet anyway, since they kind of stuck with the 2-pounder just to continue, again, mass producing stuff after Dunkirk. But eventually they did design a 3-man turret, that bulged out more to be able to get a loader in there to take off the duty from the commander. And ultimately they were able to get a 6-pounder gun in there. And there was a version as well with a quick firing 75 millimeter gun that was developed. So the tank, aside from the North Africa campaign, took part in the invasion of Madagascar. In the Pacific, the New Zealand Army, the 3rd New Zealand Infantry, or the 3rd New Zealand Armored Brigade in the Solomons used about 20-odd tanks there. But the big user for this tank ended up being the Soviets. They started receiving them in a lend-lease capacity in late 1941. First took part in the Battle of Moscow, and they were used by the Soviets all the way through to the end of the war. In fact, they kept requesting orders on them, even though they, after the war denied that the Valentine was of any use for them. They kept requesting production of it to be continued all the way to the end of the war. So out of the ones that went to the Soviets, 2,124 are the British-made ones, and 1,208 of the Canadian-built ones ended up being shipped to the Soviet Union. Last real kind of tank use or tank battle use of the Valentine was by the Egyptians. They used it in the 48 Arab-Israeli War. Total production ended up being about 8,275 tanks. Out of that, 6,855 came from the UK, and 1,420 were for the Canadians. So this made up about a quarter of British wartime production, and it's the most built of any one type of tank from the British. So a fairly significant tank, even though it really didn't do a whole lot of combat with the British. It ended up being used a lot for training, equipping, second line units and things. And it was also the basis for a lot of the conversions into engineering tanks and bridging tanks and things like that. So even though a ton of them were built, it didn't see a whole lot of action compared to some of the other tanks. So that's a little history on the Valentine. So let's take a look at the kit itself. This is typical of the 48 scale series from Bandai. These really simple white boxes with some nice artwork on the cover here. Across the bottom here, you've got the Union Jack and the red stripe. Precise scale, fine detailed inside and out, crew and decals included. Making a note of super detailed interior on here. And on the side, we've got a little history, of the pinpoint models is what they're calling this series, and a cutaway of the model showing some of the interior detail. Looks like engine hood opens to show the detail of the engine and includes 4 soldiers. On this side, a sample of other kits. An Austin K5, a Daimler Scout Car, Infantry Tank Matilda, and an Su-85. On the end, we have a repeat of the top box art, the kit number, and here's the importer for Bandai in the United States over in Carson, California. This is a few miles away from me, and recommended for 10 and up. There's a stapled box, which was typical of Japanese kits for the 60s and early 70s. Bottom's also stapled. And here's our instructions. So we've got the full address for Bandai. You can send in for a catalog as well. Photograph of the tank, photograph of the completed model, printed in Japan. Do have a parts layout with number callouts on here. And then we got assembly of the engine block, suspension, putting in the parts on the inside and attaching the suspension onto the hull. There's your main gun and your besa. Turret basket, assembling your turret, and making antennas by stretching some sprue, finishing up the turret, some rear deck stuff. Here's the hatches that open, it looks like. A lot of grab handles and stuff. So pretty nice kit, especially for 48 scale. And a few more tools, equipment, bits and bobs on the outside. And then assembling the frame, or the top of the hull to the bottom. And then how to put the tracks together. Here's a sample of how to paint your crew figures. Photograph of the completed kit. On the back side here shows you some basic placement of the decals and a little history of the tank itself. There's also a little catalog in here, a pamphlet showing you some more information about the Pinpoint Series 48 scale kit. Yag Panther, Yag Tiger, Sherman. Giving you some examples of how you can make your own little dioramas out of their kits. Backside, some more Pinpoint Series stuff. You've got all kinds of diorama equipment, fences, barricades, guideposts, whatnot. Then you've also got a whole series of infantry to go along with the armor. A number of different German ones. In fact, it's all German except for 2 sets of U.S. infantry here. And then here's some more of their armor. This is a fairly extensive series of 48 scale kits. They were really about the only ones making 48 scale on a consistent basis until Tamiya started bringing 48 scale back in armor. So here we have the hull with a nice big fat Bandai logo on the bottom here. Excuse me. And the kit is still bagged, so we'll open this up here and bend back some staples. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this tree. So, pretty large tree of parts. There are numbers on the stems, so you don't have to use the that parts layout. Pretty nice. A little bit of flash here and there, but overall pretty crisply molded with some fine details. Okay, there's that one. And let's take a look at this one here. Okay, got this bag opened. So it includes the decals. So here's our top of the hull. We've got, looks like some rivets. Pretty nice. Looks like there's a little bit of texture on the surface as well, too, for the armor depiction. And then we've got our suspension. Does look like there's some sinkholes happening in here. Not sure how much you'd see those once the suspension's all put together. Got some pretty nice road wheels, drive gears, more suspension parts, some engine parts. So pretty well detailed for a 48 scale kit. And this kit's got 3 sets of tracks, molded in a kind of grayish, metallic-y color. So I know some people aren't fans of these types of tracks. They do make it fairly simple, but it makes it a little harder for kind of creating the weight of the track. And so the instructions only show 2, but there's 3 in here, so I don't know if it's an accident or if they do give you an extra one. Here's the decals. Quite a number of different sets of markings on here. There are, it's extremely hard to see, but there's a few tank names on here. There's a number of serial numbers down here in white. There's a few serial numbers here in black, and some formation signs. So I'm not the best as far as British tank insignia go, but from what I was able to figure out, this first one with the kind of panda bear face is from the 9th Armored Division. This swan looking thing is from the 23rd Independent Armored Brigade. The hammered, or the mailed fist, is the 6th Armored Division. The bull is from the 11th, and then this, I guess it's a cow of some sort, or a bison, or not sure. Some sort of animal, and that's from the 1st Armored Division. And then you get some individual tank markings from within the troop. So pretty extensive set of markings here for you to build it. There's, aside from the one showing you placement of a few of those markings, I guess you got to figure it out for yourself which ones go to what. So there you have it. Pretty neat little kit from Bandai. And there were 3 different boxings from around the same time period from Bandai. Almost all identical, just slight changes in what was being presented on the box cover. So they're all from 75, in that mid-70s range. In the 80s, a Chinese company called Fuman issued the kit in an almost identical box. And then finally in the 90s, another Chinese company called Frog, not affiliated with the original Frog as far as I can tell, but they made, looks like a series of ships and quite a number of repops of these Bandai kits as well. And that was in the 90s under the Frog name. And that's about it. So not a lot of production on these. Some of these 48 scale Bandai kits can command some pretty high prices on them due to their relative rareness. Now that Tamiya has been making 48 scale models, I think that's affected the prices on some of the ones that they've ended up making. So I don't know if they've got a Valentine yet in their series, but for quite a while, this was the only game in town, really, for 48 scale armor. Well, that's all for today. If you've built one of these, of course, tell us about it in the comment section. If you got one sitting on your shelf, take a picture of it, send it in, and share it with the rest of our viewers for our next viewer build video. Well, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great day.